All right, this is Ryan Rockwell from Grow Yoga Biz, and I wanted to welcome Rachael. I am so excited to bring you on. And again, Rachael Carlevale from Ganjasana. Yes, I want to make sure I got this, ganjasana.com. And so I've been so excited to talk to you about this and get more information. And so let's start. First off, welcome. And then let's start there. What is Ganjasana and how did that get started?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I'm really honored to be on your show, and I love talking about the work that I do. So Ganjasana is the conscious pairing of regenerative cannabis plant medicine with the practices of yoga, meditation, and mindfulness. And so this practice, it came from the roots of my own personal experience and my own practices. About 5 years ago, I was actually diagnosed with cancer and have a uterine tumor. And to back up a little bit, my educational background has been in plant and soil sciences. I went to school to study about plant medicine and was studying pre-med. And I spent my senior semester abroad studying with the Shipibo tribe shamans out of the Peruvian Amazon. So in learning about plant medicine through that lineage,
Wow.
it really opened my perspective about how we can build relationships with plants and seeing plants as sort of a spiritual being to guide us to health and healing. And I had also been practicing yoga since I was about 15 years old. So having those modalities and tools within me, when I was diagnosed with cancer in the emergency room, they wanted to give me an emergency surgery, a complete hysterectomy. I thought back to my plant teachings and said no, and tried this alternative medicine approach, which is actually more of a traditional approach and an ancient way of healing.
Yeah.
And so that was 5 years ago. And today I'm really proud to say that through using these tools of yoga, meditation, and mindfulness to deepen connection with cannabis medicine, I've been able to heal my body. I still have the tumor. It shrunk over 20 millimeters. I still keep up with the mindfulness practices, and I still use cannabis all the time and treating my body to maintain this balance. But that's sort of where the knowledge and education came from to bring Ganjasana to the people.
Yeah. Well, I was not prepared for that. That was, that was amazing. I mean, because not to take anything away from marijuana by any means. I mean, it's something that I did growing up, and it was more for recreational than it was for medicinal. So to just really hear that history of where you're coming from, it's like, and your education along the way, that's such an amazing path that you've been on. So I was not prepared for that, kind of background, but that's absolutely amazing and makes so much sense. So when were you able to kind of bridge the gap with that and start, kind of reaching out to the communities and teaching Ganjasana?
Well, I spent about, like I said, 5 years developing the practice just for my own personal needs. To give you an idea of what my life was like, I was severely underweight. I had to be fed by IVs in the hospital. I couldn't even assimilate nutrients or eat food. And so I was pretty much on bed rest. So when you think about yoga, it's not your typical downward dog. I was more using conscious breathing techniques and just slight gentle movements to get my energy back into my body. And then the cannabis obviously helps a lot. We know it helps with nausea and pain and stimulating appetite. So by combining all of those things together, I was able to slowly heal myself and nurse myself back to balance.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's, we found out before we came on officially that we're both here in Boulder, which is sort of in Colorado. And, it's such an amazing place to be, where people are really kind of finding the amazing benefits of marijuana in such a responsible way. And it's just a really beautiful thing. And so to just talk more about the healing, how do you incorporate that story and then incorporate like healing into the Ganjasana workshops that you teach?
Absolutely. I love telling my story to give people a little bit of insight about where the practices came from.
Mhm.
And then I always honor my teachers, my plant teachers. I say that, the plants are really our guru. And guru in Sanskrit, it means the shedder of light. And so I say, I'm just a guide, and the plants are the ones who are really teaching you. So
Yeah.
I like to give the plants credit. And then also my teachers, the shamans that I've been working with. I've been working with the same shaman for the last 5 years down in Peru. I actually just got back in December. I spent a couple of weeks. I always try to
Wow.
go to continue with my teaching and my learning. I'm always a student just as much as I am a teacher. And so these classes are sort of more like a ceremony. They're set in a ceremonial setting in which we develop this deep respect for the plant and
Mhm.
build a relationship before we commune with her. So if you think about a relationship, with a person, you might have a date, you might talk, you might ask them questions to get to know about that person before you say sleep with somebody. And so if you think about a plant that way, before you just mindlessly smoke a joint or consume
Yeah,
some,
yeah, yeah.
you need to have that intimate connection so you can understand and have intention about why you want to use this plant so that the medicine will be most available for you. Because we can certainly, smoke weed and feel high and just let ourselves aimlessly drift away in that sensation, or we can use this guided intention and that space of our altered consciousness to find health and healing. But that's where the tools come in about we still have to consciously do the work. The plants aren't just
Yes.
going to heal us. We're not just going to get high and become a thoughtful, wonderful person. We need to put a little bit of work into that. And so
Sure.
that's where the tools of yoga can come in, where we learn about, conscious breathing techniques or different mindfulness meditations that we can use while we're in that altered state to help bridge the worlds between our spirit and the plant spirit.
Wow, there's so much that comes up, just from hearing
Yeah.
you talk. I mean, absolutely coming with the intention and then having a shaman, having someone that had to actually kind of guide you through that experience. Is I've never had that shaman experience yet. And it's interesting because I'm surrounded by so many friends who go to Peru on a consistent basis, that they do ayahuasca ceremonies. And this is that what's kind of comes up for me when you speak about this. And maybe you can talk to the difference of that. But at the same time, like, God, even talking about plants and their healing, like that's something I've never necessarily connected with. I've had plants, I've had, beautiful flowers. I'm not very good at keeping them alive, I have to admit. Um, but yeah, what you speak of really speaks to the heart of just something really intentional. And that's what I love about yoga is really when you're coming with a lot of intention. Maybe why I like teaching yin yoga, because there just seems to be so much intention there. So let me ask you, when you have these experiences, how do you compare that to ayahuasca, if you can even speak to that? And just kind of guide us through the workshop, what kind of happens in a workshop as well.
Sure. So yeah, I love that you brought up ayahuasca. It's definitely one of the great master plants that we have in our medicine chest, in the rainforest and
Sure.
of this earth. And so when I do work with the shamans in Peru, we do work a lot with ayahuasca plant medicine. And actually, the first time I sat in an ayahuasca ceremony, cannabis came up for me, the spirit of cannabis, because if you think about plants almost like people, ayahuasca is a strong, powerful woman, so she's like this master plant in the jungle, and then cannabis is another master, strong, powerful woman. So sometimes what happens when you put two strong women in the same room, they might clash a little bit. And so
I've experienced that. I've experienced that, yes.
the first time I drank ayahuasca, she took me on this ride of redeveloping my relationship with cannabis, because I, very much like a lot of people, were using it in a recreational way that was actually not respecting the plant and abusing it. So I've had a relationship with cannabis since I was probably 12, 13 years old, and had been, smoking all day, every day, wake and bake and what have you, because that was my lifestyle. And when I sat with ayahuasca, I didn't realize that I had been abusing cannabis until she really rocked my world and showed me this is not how you respect someone in a relationship, and this is not how you have a healthy relationship with somebody. Again, if you think about a person, you're not with them all day, every day. Or if you think about a medicine, like a pharmaceutical, like an Advil, for example, you're not waking up and popping an Advil. That's not very healthy. Mm-hmm. And so she showed me that all plants have this lightness and a darkness. And I had been using cannabis for its darkness, because the plant has an ability for us to sort of tune out and drop out and push away our emotions and not face our reality.
Absolutely.
But cannabis also has this beautiful lightness to help us heal. So cannabis can help us face our truest selves, and really look within. So whenever I hear people say, oh, I get anxious when I smoke weed, I think, wow, you must be stuck in this space of worrying about your past or worrying about your future, because cannabis forces you to really look at yourself. And sometimes, we'll feel anxious when we don't like what we see. Mm-hmm. So it helps us to remember our most authentic self and bring us back to that space. And so by having this new intention before communicating with cannabis, I feel like it really helped in my healing process. So for example, I haven't smoked yet today. I don't need to. I woke up. I'm feeling great. I have no need to commune with the cannabis plant in this moment. However, last week, I was on my cycle, my moon cycle, and because I have a tumor in my uterus, I get extreme pain. And so when I'm feeling that pain, I'm going to hit a huge bong rip and take in as much plant medicine as I can and use it systematically to heal my body. And that way I feel it's more effective too when you have that dialed down intention about when and why you're using it. And it certainly can be used recreational as well. It's definitely a plant of peace and friendship. I see it bring so many people together in a nonviolent way. You don't see people getting high and getting in a bar fight or something like you might with alcohol. Sure. And so it's a really beautiful aspect of the plant in that it reveals ourselves to ourselves. And when we can connect with our most highest self, then we can connect with others. But you first have to know, who you are before you can open yourself to another person. So that's how I love, it can be used in so many different ways.
Well, again, you just continue to just open this topic up more and more and more. And it's beautiful. And I think of the Yoga Sutras because there is, I can't tell you exactly where in the Yoga Sutras that it speaks that herbs can help you get closer to God, and just like you talk about a darkness and a lightness, if you continue to go towards it and go towards it and go towards it like a relationship where you're spending all your time with marijuana, then that makes sense that you're not using it in the healing aspect, the lightness of it, and using it for the right purposes. So listen, I'm just so happy that you're so open. Obviously, I mean, of course you're open about this topic, but it's a beautiful thing because so often we'll look at something and we'll put a box around it and we'll say, okay, marijuana is this, it's for escaping and things of that nature. But, it's so beautiful to think of it like a plant and to think of it in the aspects that you speak of. So really, really just amazing. What's also coming up for me is my 6th grade science project was actually how plants grow, and if you speak to them or if you play music. And, I'm in 6th grade. If you're really going to do this out, you're going to have a control group of like maybe 100 plants, 30 here, 30 here, 30 here. I had 3 plants and they were like within a foot of each other. And I would go talk to one of them, but I'm sure the other ones heard me. But,
awesome.
I did see a slight little growth, in the one that actually I was talking to closest. But it really, you bring up such a beautiful relationship with something that's alive, with something that's absolutely alive. And in fact, now I'm thinking of the movie Avatar, which really kind of hinted at this connection that we have that is under the soil as well.
Yeah,
so,
what is it, that like tree of life in the Avatar? But I love you did that science experiment because other scientists have done similar experiments and seen the same things. There's a book called What a Plant Knows, and then there's another book called The Soul of Soil. And then there's been tests done, on molecules of water. Just if you think, negative thoughts versus thinking positive thoughts, it'll change the molecular structure of the water. I mean, it's been proven in science. But what I really like to see is that experiential evidence of actually feeling it and knowing it and seeing it, which I experienced through the ayahuasca plant medicine for the first time when I was in school studying plants. And that brings me to another topic about it is so important the way in which the plant grows for it to work for you, for it to be a true medicine. So for us in our ceremonies, we only work with true organic cannabis, which what does organic mean in this industry and, in these standards and the gray type of laws that are out there? I've created my own sort of standards. And so that means that the plant is grown in a living organic soil, which models nature. That's how nature grows all of her plants in living organic soil. And then we use the principles of permaculture and regenerative agricultural techniques to cultivate the plant medicine. So that might look like using vermicompost, worms in the plant, or companion plants, cover crops to help, for example, fix the nitrogen in the soil. In that way, we're eliminating bottled nutrients, fungicides, pesticides, herbicides, any toxic chemicals from this entire process. And it creates this pure, clean medicine. And when I, years ago, when I was first diagnosed with cancer, I wanted the cleanest medicine possible. And even if you've heard of the Rick Simpson oil, that's extracted with naphtha, which is a known carcinogen. So why would you use a carcinogen and give that to a cancer patient? It just doesn't.
They do it every day when they do chemotherapy, It's...
Right. And so most dispensaries in Colorado do not, to my opinion, provide true clean medicine. And so there's been a couple now, and so now I'm starting to work with a couple of these other places, so I don't have to provide all the cannabis on my own. And so, for example, we did our last ceremony with a Good Weed Company, and so I checked out their grow and their
what a perfect name.
I put my hands in the soil, and that's part of the Ganjasana ceremony is when you commune with the plant, when you build this relationship. I bring the soil in and you get to feel the worms and you get to see that it's alive and the roots. And
really, there's worms in the soil. They feel that.
Yeah, I make everybody hold the worms.
Oh, man. Wow. This gets real. This is getting real here.
Yeah, it gets really real. And, if that's part of connecting to the spirit of the plant is connecting to all of the nature that created her. So,
wow. Yeah, you got me at worms. That stopped me back in my tracks for a second. I do want to say just really quick about, in regards, I commented on chemotherapy. You know, I can't really say too much about that because I haven't done my research. So I don't want to offend anyone talking about chemotherapy, but it's really, you know, beautiful to think about just what you're talking about in general about, you know, kind of coming with an organic voice, a holistic approach in the way that these medicines are procured. So, I'm trying to think. There's so many questions that I want to ask you. That I mean, wow, it's like I don't even know where to start. But so, how often do you teach these workshops? And do you have? I'd heard that you did it's called the Green Tent, which is a woman's ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak to that? Actually,
yeah, we have one coming up January 27th. And the green tent is modeled after the traditional red tent, which the red tent occurred, you know, before biblical times when women used to all be so aligned and in tune with nature that they would have their cycles at the same time during the new moon. And to go into the science of this, that the pineal gland is like an aperture on a camera.
yeah.
And so it's connected with all our bodily functions and systems in the reproductive system. And so when the moon is dark, there's less, when it's a new moon, it's the darkest time of year. So it's sort of signal for the body to have your period or menstrual cycle. And animals are still pretty connected with nature, and that you'll see most animals going into heat during the springtime. And so that's when they'll start to mate and have their babies in the spring, you know, a few months after. So for humans, they would sit in the red tent and women would sit on bales of straw and bleed together. And it was their time to slow down and connect as women in the community. And the men would come and serve them and feed them. And
wow.
What we see today is a complete loss of this connection of being female.
Oh, yeah.
And having that divine connection with nature. And so today we are a rushed society. We're always trying to move forward. And you'll even see like tampon ads with women in a crazy crow pose doing yoga, saying, you know, you can keep going. But that's actually counterproductive for our bodies. And this is something I learned through my health diagnosis, because I see it as a blessing in disguise, because I was like that. I was always going, and if I had my cycle, I just sort of ignored it. It was just something that was happening, but I would just keep in my daily routine. And so the red tent theory invites us to slow down and step into that place of our deep intuition and knowing as a woman. And in yoga, our different energies, we can either have our energies moving in a downward flow, which is called apana vayu. And so we want to continue that downward flow of energy to have the most balanced cycle possible. So relieving things like stress or PMS or bloating and cramps and things like that. So the green tent takes these ancient traditions and brings them into the modern time with our plant medicine. So the green being the cannabis aspect that's added in. And so cannabis has been used for thousands of years for women, for health and healing, for the reproductive system. Mm-hmm. And I especially have been using it for my own reproductive system. So this is sort of a culmination of the specific experiences of my own and experiences of other women through history coming back in this modern day and age, so that we can best live in balance with nature and find our healthiest cycles possible.
I mean, seriously, like this is amazing, you know. And the thing is that for the last 2 years, I've been coaching primarily women yoga teachers. I mean, occasionally a man will come in, and what's just amazing is that just being in the yoga vibe, just being in the yoga community, I continue to learn so much about women. And when you speak of like this ancient, I mean, to be able to have women come together and to share that experience at a time when, and the fact that they're all having it at the same time. I mean, you're talking about people being in tune with nature. You're talking about a community being in tune with itself. Mm-hmm. And the men recognizing what the women are going through to serve them in that capacity. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I just, I guess when you see these things, you see the green tent, a woman's cannabis, yoga circle. You're like, oh, green. So it's probably, about weed, but you don't really realize everything that goes into it. And that's really, really beautiful what you're describing. Again, it's like, where do you go from there? So what I do realize though about women is that they often wear so many hats, in life. You speak of being overly, productive. And often you'll have a woman who's a mom. She's also a wife. She's then, of course, a yoga teacher or a studio owner. And she has to put on so much. And I think it's important to speak of this from a man's perspective. We just don't realize all the things that women have on them, all the responsibilities. And I truly think that women are much stronger than men. I really do believe that. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to see the feminine coming into blossom. Like, obviously there's so much we have to go through. But I mean, just imagine when you have that society that's an even mix of feminine and masculine. It's just gonna be amazing. It's gonna be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they say we're in a time of a great feminine rising. And, in respect of our brothers too, we all have a divine femininity and a divine masculinity within us. And, within all people, the brothers and the sisters on this planet, the feminine rising is more of this sense of our side of compassion and caring and healing that's arising with everyone. So for the men, sort of dropping a little bit of your responsibilities of typically not having to show your emotions or having to appear to be this big, strong man when it's okay to be vulnerable or it's okay to cry. And that's how we all remain balanced. Because what I see on the women's side is the women are trying to be more masculine, taking control of souls.
Yes.
But when we do that, we create health problems in our body. So when we don't, recognize or slow down for our moon cycles, that's when we might start to get a lot of pain and cramping because we're not honoring that space and we're not giving our bodies space to just be. So sometimes if I'm on my moon, I might cancel all my plans for that day and just sit home and self-care. And I know that's not available for everybody depending on what your job or your lifestyle is. But just at least try to slow down a little bit in what you're doing so we can honor our bodies. And there's such these mechanical machines that move through life. We feed ourselves and we drive to work and we do our job. And, think of yourself as this divine spirit and you deserve to live a meaningful life. And when we stop and connect with that part, that's when we can relieve things like our mental illnesses, like depression or anxiety or things that have us stuck in our past or future. Because we're just our culture, it's the culture that we're in right now that's almost forcing us to be that way. And so we can take the power back by seeing ourselves as the source of this power.
That's awesome.
By connecting with nature too.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a single guy, so I date quite a bit, and what I've found is that I go on dates with women that are in the business world that have had to almost suppress the feminine and embrace a masculine kind of spirit at work, and gosh, I just remember talking to one of them saying, hey, you don't have to put up, let your feminine shine, let that really come out. Like, Again, working with women over the last few years, just primarily, it's been such an eye opener to what you all go through, in terms of, society, in terms of the way that you're judged. And doing women's empowerment groups, I actually will often talk about what's your biggest vulnerability. And without a doubt, what often comes up 90% of the time is their looks. Like how society puts so much value on looks. I know I'm kind of going into a different topic, but it's important. It's incredibly important for the male, audience to realize what women go through, to put themselves in their shoes, to have that compassion, to have that understanding of this is what is often thrusted upon women, and just kind of understanding. If we can come to understanding, then I think that's one of the first steps to compassion, is understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just had that women's march. There was over 100,000 people in Denver, and I unfortunately didn't go. I was on my moon, and I was like, you know what, I'll send my spirit there, but
Sure.
honoring my body. That was my woman's march for myself, was just respecting my own body in that moment. But it was so powerful to see all the women that came together on this planet. And like you said, it's important that the men recognize this. And when I study with the shamans in Peru, I actually work with a female shaman. Her name is Estella, and she received her gifts passed down from her grandmother. And it's beautiful to see this lineage happening, because a lot of shamans are males, and the original wisdom keepers of the plants were women. That's why we have this theory of the witches when that happened in the colonialism period.
Yes.
Because the witches were the women who worked with the plants, and they were so connected with nature that they could tap into that knowledge of the plants and help people heal. So yeah, it's important we have this female uprising. And another organization I'm connected with is called Cosmic Sister, and that's a nonprofit network that funds and provides grants for women to go down to the Amazon and experience the ayahuasca psychedelic ceremonies.
Wow.
So that in December, that was one of the groups we had. We took 7 women down to the Amazon to work with Estella. Our Croyandas, what they call it in their Shipibo language, is a female plant healer. And so we brought 7 different women with us who, from all walks of life, all at different ages and types of people, to come down. And so this was about the 4th year that we've done that, and just really trying to uplift that female voice, because once a female can experience this divine connection with nature, it's like one more person, or the 100th monkey theory, one more person to be this voice for the plants, and to find her power within through the plants. And what I found too is that yoga helps us in this connection with the plants, because I don't know if you've ever tried ayahuasca, but it's not always a great experience. I mean, sometimes it can be very scary, or it can be traumatic, because the plant reveals yourself to yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you've had trauma in your life, it might make you relive that traumatic experience so you can relearn from it and release your story. But in doing so, that can be very painful. It's not like taking, other psychedelics, like maybe LSD, where it sparkles in rainbows. Ayahuasca is very powerful, and they call her the grandmother medicine. So it's kind of like your grandmother slapping you in the face to wake up. And, that's why they say I'm woke, because the medicine really does awaken you to your purpose in this life, and lets you release your traumas, and lets you release anything that's been holding you back, so you can live in this highest power. And that's where we heal.
Well, let me ask you. So there's I actually just recently found out about like kind of a healing circle in the area that uses mushrooms actually, and they
Mm.
say it's the grandfather. That's what they call it. So how would you compare those two, if you can at all? I don't know.
Yeah, psilocybin is another great mind altering medicine. And again, just like any type of plant medicine you work with, I'd say it's really important to have an experienced guide with you,
Mhm.
because you can certainly eat mushrooms and whatever end up in a pile of mud at some festival. As I'm sure you've seen some crazy videos or memes out on the internet, or you can eat mushrooms with a guide and grow. So I think it's another amazing plant teacher. And as you said, it's seen as the grandfather. So different plants take on different genders almost. And so, like San Pedro is another plant that's seen as grandfather, whereas cannabis is a very, very female entity. So it's really, what do you need in your life, and how can you take the teachings from the male plants and the female plants and use those teachings for your own healing?
Um, yeah, I just realized that I have a student that I work with. Her name is Nara. She is a yoga teacher in Mexico, and
Mm,
she provides these retreats where she is the shaman. And I didn't know that the women were originally the kind of the keepers of the plants, that they were
yeah.
the guardians of that. So that's really beautiful. Listen, I think we could keep going on and on. Maybe what we should have a part two at some point in time soon. But I do
I
want to
could talk
thank you.
about plants all day.
Nice, nice. So tell us, like, how can people connect with you? Like, how can they find out more about what you're doing and about the ceremonies that you have, both for men and women and for everyone? Yeah. So how can people connect with you?
Well, you can always find me on the website, ganjasana.com, or my email is Rachael@ganjasana.com.
Awesome.
And we have our green tent ceremony coming up on the 27th in Boulder at Earth Yoga Boulder Studio. And then we have our next Ganjasana ceremony is going to be in Denver on February 4th. And so we generally have a good mix of males and females at those ceremonies. So everybody is welcome. You do have to be 21 or over to join,
Good point.
just regarding the laws.
Sure.
And I love talking about this. It's my passion. I say I work for the plants. I credit cannabis to being one of the great plants that helped save my life. So this is my work and my service to give back. These plants have given so much to us, and I just want to help give that back to the people, because we can all access the medicine. We just need to have that guidance to do it. So I don't, call myself a shaman by any means. There's definitely a lot more training down that path, I feel. But I love to be that guide and helping other people have that transformational experience. So, please reach out to me and connect.
Awesome. Listen, thank you again for all of your time. This was very, very eye-opening and really just beautiful to talk about, just kind of where it's flowed from, talking about the medicine and having the intention, talking about the masculine or the feminine really taking such a rise in our society and how that interacts with the masculine. So thank you so much for your time. And really, I think we should have you on again for sure, because this has been a lot of fun. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. It's been great to speak with you.
All right. You take care.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you.